Hello, wanted to stop by and share some information with you. I know I'm not the only one who's gone through something in life, and somehow, some way within yourself, you knew that you either give up or give in. For the most part, all my life, I believe when I first lost my son in 1998, I believe that was the first time in my lifetime that I either had to grieve so hard and give up, because that is the hardest thing to ever experience in a lifetime of losing your own child. I remember grasping that I had to really reach out to God and help me through this whole process of losing my own child, holding him and knowing that he was not going to survive. I think it gave me a whole new perspective of life, that you can have something so great and in a matter of time it could be gone. And in this situation was so horrific for me, because I lost a child and was born on the same day, and I lost him the same day. I remember holding him, and I remember telling him everything I could think of in that little time period. I really didn't know what to say. I didn't know I believe I held my expression to just give him all of myself, and try to explain to him, I'm gonna miss those talks, the crawling, the walking, the talking, the first birthdays, the graduations. All that. I talked a lot I believe in that whole hour and a half I spoke with him, and it seemed like forever, but it was quick, because I couldn't talk no more, but I held him, and I remember saying, I don't know how it's gonna go moving forward without him. I had my daughter, who was about 7 months as well. I knew I had her, but I had my son and I had my daughter, so that was a blessing in itself. And some people might judge me as far as me having my daughter and then having my son, but I say this: at that time and at that moment, holding my son and telling him that I love him, I'm gonna miss him, and I was touching his toes and rubbing his face, and he was just like the cutest little thing ever. So fragile, but yet I didn't understand what was happening or why it was going to happen, that I was going to lose him within the 2 hours I had him. But I knew I had to reach out to God, and I knew I had to really let him know that I needed him moving forward, because I needed to get strong about the loss of my child. And I'm going to tell you how God works. After losing him, I grasped to pray to God every day to keep me strong, because I had my daughter. I had to be strong for her. And because I had to be strong for her, I had to make sure that whatever it took to um, protect her, love her, and be strong. And I had to be her role model. I had to be the strong woman because one day she was going to be a woman. And I wanted to reach out to God to make me strong for whatever came at me after all this. And needless to say, I believe that it was that time that I really had a lot of faith in God. And I give a lot of thanks to my mom because she's she's a very godly woman, and she spoke about God. She prayed all the time, and she was my mom was very loving. My mom is very loving to this day. And I believe losing my child, I started to have a relationship with God and never knew what I was going to go through in my lifetime. Oh my God, it's just so many stories are yet to be told about my journey of losing my child, losing the father of my children, and my loss has been it's been overwhelming, and still I believe that I never let go of God. I have faith in whatever I was going through, and I knew not to question why any of this even happened or why it happened. I've never questioned it. But I knew in the process of this, I've learned that stress can kill you. I believe I was in a lot of stress when I lost my child. And I got that confirmation from my doctor when I found out, and when I was asking him why I lost my child, what happened. And he explained to me, or asked me, was I under a lot of stress, or if, what was going on. And I remember that when I found out that, right, actually before I found out that I was pregnant, I was kind of stressed because at the time before I lost my son, I found out my grandma had stomach cancer. And I remember I was having stomach pain, and I said, well, let me go get checked, because just in case, I was kind of concerned of the possibility, because, they say cancer runs in the family. So I wanted to get checked, and I remember going to my manager and asking if I could have a Friday off. And I was that concerned, and I had asked if I could have off, and I went through her, and then I went through my store manager, and my store manager said whatever my manager said. My manager said no, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not. I guess I have to figure out, what I needed to do. And come to find out, my sister was taking care of my daughter, Marissa, at the time. She was 7 months, mind you. Yes, I was a bad girl. But anyways, my daughter was 7 months old, and she was taking care of my daughter, while I was at work and stuff. And I remember picking her up one day, and actually that week that I had trying to ask off. And my I had asked to ask off, and I didn't get it. But I remember picking up my daughter, and my sister's like, Marissa's sick, she's really young, make sure you go get her checked. And I said, okay. And that was about my daughter. That was my first child. And I was very protective of, my first baby. I worked all the way till I was 9 months pregnant. And then I ended up having a doctor's appointment to see her on that Thursday. No, it was Thursday when I picked up my daughter. And my sister suggested, go get her seen. And I made the appointment. And when I made the appointment, I went ahead and said, well, you know what? I said, well, I wanted to ask for that day off. So I called in for Friday. I went to go see the doctor with my daughter and found out she was, she was okay. She was sick, but she was okay. Nothing that was, bad. But I took it upon myself, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get myself checked as well. Mind you, I called in sick. And mind you, it had to have been that Friday that I originally wanted off way before I found out my daughter was sick and I needed to go get her checked. And it was that call-in that I made in that Friday that I wanted to originally be off. I called in because of my daughter. And then I also took the initiative to go get myself checked as well. Well, when I went to go see my doctor on that Friday, I found out that, she did a test. And it was kind of weird because they told me that I was pregnant. They told me I was pregnant. And again, don't judge me. But so I was excited because it's like, I know at least I wasn't cancer, right? And I remember going to back to work on Saturday. And I ran into my store manager, and the same one I asked if I could, I was trying to see if he could work with me to get me off because my manager said no, and he said whatever my manager said, and she said no, and I was like, oh, well, it is what it is. And I ended up calling in because of my daughter, and oh my goodness, the first time in my lifetime, I was shy, mind you, I was very shy at the time. I went ahead and I was getting ready to clock in, and I bypassed my store manager, and I said, hi, good morning. And he kind of looked at me and made a face, and that kind of bothered me. Why? I was a very shy person, and I've never encountered anybody being mean or ugly, but that bothered me. It really settled with me, and it really bothered me. So I clocked in, and I was really, I don't know what you call it, but it bothered me. So I came across him again on the way back to my department, and I passed him, and I stopped and I said, I'm sorry. I says, I greeted you. Is there any reason why you gave me the attitude that you given me? I said good morning, and you gave me that look. And he says, his response was, oh yeah, well, I heard that you got your way. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, I heard that you asked me if you wanted Friday off. Looked like you got your way. I said, no, sir. I says, I didn't get my way. I says, yes, I wanted that Friday off, but my daughter happened to be sick on that Thursday, so I took it upon myself to call in to go ahead and get her seen because she's my first child, and I wanted to make sure everything's okay. And he looked at me, and he's like, yeah. I'm like, sir, what are you trying to say? Are you saying that I'm lying? And he looked at me, he says, yeah. And let me tell you, at that moment, I was like in so despair. I was like, what? And again, I'm a very shy person, and I've never experienced anybody being mean or ugly to that point. And I went ahead and went back to my department, and I started crying. I got so emotional about it. And right before I left, I remember telling him, no, sir, I'm not lying. I says, I will never use my kid as an excuse to take time off from work. I says, why would you even consider that? And he was like, well, you wanted your way and you got your way. And I to me, that struck me as him accusing me as lying. So anyways, I went back to the department, and my manager, she saw me, was upset, and I was actually crying. And she's like, "What's wrong?" And I told her what had happened. She goes, "Oh, you need to go report him. I'm sorry that you went through that. I'm so sorry." And long story short, nothing came out of that. But it is what it was, right? At that moment. And I remember from that Saturday all the way to the following Saturday, I woke up, and let me tell you, I woke up and I was bleeding, and I was in a lot of pain. And I remember my sister said, but she was with me at the time, she said, call the nurse. And the nurse, I called from the hospital. At the time, it's called Ask a Nurse. I called and asked for information and let them know what was going on. I told them that I experienced what I experienced that morning. And she said, well, go to the nearest hospital. And we lived in the country. So I got to the nearest hospital, and I got there, and the nurse says, well, you should be okay, because we just had a patient who had twins, and she went through the same thing you did, and everything is fine. I don't know why she compared me to hers, because everybody's situation is different, but there was almost like a similar situation, but actually it wasn't. Anyways, so the doctor came in, and they talked to me. They had me on a stress belt. They had me on a heart monitor for the baby. And come to find out, the doctor came in, and he's like, well, Dolores, I just wanted to tell you, he had his hand on my hand, and he says, I want to let you know that you're going to have your baby. And I got so excited, because I remember telling the dad that, that we're going to have a baby. And I went into total shock, because he held my hand. He had his hand over my hand, and he says, you're going to have this baby, but your baby's not going to survive. I'm like, what? So it's like this joy that you get, and all of a sudden it's like a slap in the face. I was like, what? And I ended up having, he checked me, and then I guess when he checked me, the water broke, what have you. He said, well, we're going to put you in an emergency. We can take you to the OR, because it's an emergency. You're going to have your baby. So I went to the operating room, and after I had my baby, I remember asking the doctor, well, what is the gender of my baby? And he said, it's a boy. Now, stop for a minute. Imagining that you're excited you had your daughter, and you're about to have a baby. You had your baby, and it's a boy. So I had my girl, and I had my boy. But I knew at that instinct, the father wasn't there. Knowing that instinct that, oh my God, it's a boy. And it's like the joy went from joy for 3 seconds, and it just vanished, because then the truth of the fact that I was going to lose my child, he was not going to survive. And they put me in my room, they cleaned up my baby, and they wrapped him up, and then I sat up in that hospital and held my son for 2 hours, talked with him and spoke with him and sang to him, and then I saw him take his last breath, right? And I wanted to share, even at that moment, I need to say this. For those who don't understand that stress can kill you, let this be known. Stress killed my child, because when I went to the follow-up, I asked the doctor, what happened? Why did I lose my child? What happened? And he asked me, were you under stress? And I said, well, yeah, because I remember my store manager accusing me of lying, and that really bothered me, because that's something I've never experienced in my lifetime, and somebody accusing me of something, because I wasn't a perfect person, but I was one of those that never encountered mean people. Nevertheless, cruel. Someone accusing me of lying, right? Well, I think I carried that weight for a whole week, and then a week later, it affected me, and I ended up losing my child. So I wanted to let you know that anytime that you are stressed, please, 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 take it serious. Don't let stress overwhelm you, because it can kill you or put you in distress, and it could affect your health, because it affected my health. I ended up losing my child because I let something, something so uncalled for, of someone accusing me, and I ended up losing my child because I let this person get the best of me. So that's how I lost my child. This is just one section of my journey, and how I started to put God in my life, and really believe that, God is for us. And I'm glad that I was able to build that relationship with God and have a lot of faith. I didn't question why, what happened to, why. I never questioned God, just put it that way. But I did question the doctors, what happened and why that happened. And he did tell me it was due to stress. And because the fact that he was like 26 weeks, his lungs weren't fully developed. So the hospital that I chose to go to, which is closest to me because I lived in the country, wasn't equipped to help with him, to help him, get past that. But I didn't find out till like 2 weeks later that they could have taken my baby to a different hospital. But a lot of people told me, well, you should have, sue the hospital. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't have the energy for that. And I know people meant well, but for me, sometimes when God's plan is always for a reason. And, I lost my son, and I believe at that moment, I was able to build a relationship with God to this day. And let me tell you, we all go through things in life, and mine has been very, very interesting. And then we all go through stuff. And I think even with the things that I wanted to share with you in the future, I want you to understand that life has a pretty way of showing us that, we got to be strong, but we got to understand that we're not alone in anything we go through in our lifetime. And I understand that God has been really great for me, and God has been there for me. And again, I owe that a lot to my mama and my kids. I ended up having total of 3 children. I lost my son, and to see my kids to this day have their own kids, and to know that as a young adults that they too know that, having a relationship with God and believing in God and praying, and no matter what they go through in life, that, just keep God close and speak with him and pray. And yeah, you know, we have to be strong. And for me, I think for the most part, even um, losing my first love of my life and their father was probably another hard thing in my life, but I had to be strong in that journey, because that experience, because it was hard to see my kids struggle grief and at the age of 11 and 13, and I did everything in my power, tried to do everything in my power to make sure that they didn't, go do drugs, be an alcoholic, commit suicide, anything that bad could have happened when you lose someone, right? And I believe to this day that I think I did pretty good, but at the time, now that I look back at it, but my kids are amazing because they've always told me it was us three. We're very loyal to each other and loved each other unconditionally, but we also reminded each other to keep God in our life, right? And to see my kids be so strong, and at any moment they always they've always told me to stay strong about things, because they knew that I was a strong woman in their eyes. And I reflect on everything, even to this day, to see my kids. They're actually just as strong. And I wanted to share this story with you because no matter what we go through in our lifetime, put God first. Include God, thank God, and love God. This is only part of my journey, and I'll be glad to share you another part in this one. I wanted to share about stress and about the fact that keeping God first and keeping God in our life. I miss my son. I love my son. And again, I believe it took this for me to open my eyes. And not that I recall not believing in God, but it gave me an opportunity to understand that, not even an opportunity, it gave me an understanding that we need God in our life. And at that moment, God has been in my life. I'm never alone. We're never alone. Just include Him. And I did cry in silence. I did everything in my power not to cry in front of my kids. But I do want to say this: God first in everything. And I'm grateful for the strength that it gives within me. But yeah, have a blessed one.